Welcome back to Russell Street Reports 2025 Round 1 live stream. I'm Nikhil Mehta. With me is John Huey and Jared Pinder. We took a brief break for a couple picks that I'm going to run through now. We saw the Bengals take Shamar Stewart. After that was the Seahawks taking Gray Zabel, which works for them because they need an interior player, and I think that's where he really belongs. Amika Egbuka to the Buccaneers. I think this is interesting for the Buccaneers in terms of resource allocation towards wide receivers with Evans, Godwin, and McMillan already on the roster. That being said, an instant he is instant can help out. He can still rotate in instantly, and I think his versatility means he can do enough. He can be insurance for more than just one player. It also gives Chris Godwin a little bit more of a cushion to come back and not have to take on so many snaps necessarily right away. 20 was Jahdae Barron. I won't lie, I was getting a little bit hopeful that he might get all the way down to the Ravens at 27, but the Broncos wisely ended that slide. That is a great elite pairing with Patrick Surtain in that defense and was already an excellent defense last year. And then at 21, the Steelers did what I was expecting for a long time, which is take Derek Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon. He's been billed as a guy who plays like a Raven and a Steeler. We just talked to Greg from our lads about him, and really Greg DePalma from our lads, and he said he's an AFC North type football player. The Steelers agree and they take him. And that's a guy that the Ravens kind of may have wanted, and instead of getting him, they're going to have to face him now for a couple years. What do you guys think of that pick for the Steelers?
I think it's a pretty good pick. I don't know if you guys know this, but there were some potential injury concerns with Harmon's shoulder pop up in the last couple of days. But in terms of just like the player itself, I did think his pass rush ability was better than his run stopping ability, which is interesting because I thought the Steelers really needed a much bigger body defensive lineman that could stop the run a lot better. That was like their big thing, is that they just couldn't stop the run. And their linebackers were like Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen, which those players are good in coverage, but they're clearly not good at like stopping the run. So it's a little interesting in terms of that scheme fit, but in terms of that, it's a great pick for the Steelers. It's a guy that I kind of wanted the Ravens to get, and I guess it is a little disappointing the fact that we're going to have to face this guy for a couple years now.
Yeah, he doesn't have necessarily like the elite tools that I'm really worried about. It's just that he is the kind of player who seems like he's going to be a pesky Steeler, a guy who probably would have been a pesky Raven for against the Steelers, just as a stout, versatile run defender, both in terms of scheme and alignment, one gapping or two gapping from different places up and down the offensive line. And I think that is or the defensive line. And I think that's what he's going to do in Pittsburgh. It's something that they badly needed, obviously, like Greg talked about as well. So, yeah. John, what about you?
I mean, I would be wrong to say I'm not shocked. I honestly thought they were going to go Shador here with Mason Rudolph currently being QB1. I mean, the Rodgers talk, maybe they're going to get Rodgers, and if that's the case, then I'm still shocked not to see Shador. But the Harmon makes sense, and I think proof is that playoff game, watching Henry run all over essentially the interior of that defensive line. Hayward looked gassed. I think Hayward's got about a year left in him, so getting a guy like Harmon to work behind him for a year and then take over as that premier first guy in the rotation at D tackle, I think it's a solid pick for him. And luckily, we've got guys like Linderbaum at center, so it'll be interesting to see what they do if they decide to go guard this weekend.
Yeah. With us now is Russell Street Report's own capologist, Brian McFarland. Brian, thanks so much for joining us here today. It's great to have you. I know this isn't the biggest cap arena in the world with rookie contracts, but we appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on, guys.
So I saw your article, your tweet earlier today, kind of breaking down rookie contracts, but maybe for some of our listeners who may not be as familiar with how rookie contracts work, can you just give, maybe the brief 30-second overview? And then I have some more specific questions about what the Ravens could do at 27 and how that impacts their picks. or their
Sure.
cap?
So the rookie cap is basically contracts since the 2011 now, I guess, CBA have been pretty much slated. Back before that, teams were obviously giving the number one pick money way beyond anything that player had before even putting on cleats in the NFL had ever earned, and a lot, that didn't sit well with a lot of the veteran players. So the one of the negotiations and teams that obviously didn't like it either. So because there are a lot of holdouts and things like that. So they instituted a rookie cap, which basically slots the money for every player. So it's a little easier to figure out these days, just based on where he's drafted. And there's a little leeway here and there, but that's pretty much it. So then teams have the ability within the first year, they have essentially a rookie cap within that. It's a cap within a cap, basically. And they have to for their first year cap numbers, all the players have to fit in that, and it's basically just mathematical at that point. And that's why you see rookies all they'll start signing. Some might sign by Monday. They sign very quickly now, whereas it used to last into late July and sometimes into training camp.
And in terms of draft slot, the Ravens are typically picking back part of the first round, so it seems like it's traditionally been pretty easy for them to figure out, absorbing that rookie cap within their cap as a whole. But with 11 picks, the thing is with the comp picks that they're always later, and so they're always going to be cheaper, especially in that first year. But did that really affect the team's cap management at all this season, or having all those extra picks, or is it they're just so cheap it doesn't matter that much?
Well, I mean, it's kind of both. Yes, I mean they have a lot of draft capital as far as 11 picks, but as you said, a lot. I mean, there was six of them are or four of them in their sixth round. So yeah, and it works out because the way the cap works, like I said, it is a cap within the cap. So you have to fit your rookies under the rookie cap, but because a lot of those lower picks don't actually count on the cap at this time of the year because of this a rule called the rule of 51. 90 players can count on the roster at this point, so it's hard to count all of those guys under the cap. So basically, I mean, their rookie cap based on if they draft exactly where they're slotted right now is about 13 million, but that will end up being they only really need about a little over 3 million in overall cap because a lot of those players aren't going to count on the cap, and then the guys that do, that probably top 5 picks, they will push a guy off of the break or the whole full salary cap. So that means that's more savings there. So it really only takes about 3 million. So it's really not a concern for them.
And then with the one kind of cap relative observation I had was this draft was even in the situation which is unfolding right now, with Shedeur Sanders falling to the end of the first round, a team that's looking to trade up into the end of the first round is probably still going to prefer 30, 31, and 32 over going all the way up to 27 because it's both more draft capital to spend to get up that high, and it's still going to be a slightly more expensive contract, right? It's not a huge difference in contracts between 27 and 31, the way there is between maybe 5 and 10, but still enough of a difference that, between that and the draft capital a team would care.
Yeah, probably. And I think that probably the draft capital is the bigger issue there. And not that it's going to take that much more, and unfortunately for the Ravens in that scenario, there's not a team at 28 or 29 that might take a quarterback, quote unquote. So there's no need to leap. Right. There's no need to leap that high. And if they can find just like the Ravens did, with Lamar Jackson, I mean, that's exactly what they did. They traded up into the back at the last pick. And that's kind of the idea, is to get that. So you have that fifth year option. And so you get that 5th year, especially for a quarterback. So, so that's the difference there. But I don't. Yeah, if there is, and it obviously depends. If teams 30, 31, and 32 don't want to trade, or they're not interested in trading, then you maybe go a little higher.
And then in terms of how this affects the Ravens in the long term, this is one of the reasons why I really expected them to not pick a guard in the first round, is because of how expensive the 5th year option and franchise tag get for offensive guards because all 5 of the linemen are counted together. Do you think that's something that they really take into account in terms of arranging the positional value of their board and understanding that, that's really the main case that it jumps out, where the value is just so tough? We're seeing it with Linderbaum's 5th-year option and his extension negotiations right now. Do you think they take that into account? Obviously, they know about it. How much do you think they take it into account, I guess, is my question.
They probably are taking into account a little more with the Linderbaum situation now than they would have 2 years ago, perhaps, thinking about it. The last time they drafted an interior offensive lineman in the first round was Ben Grubbs in 07-ish, and the 5th-year option didn't even exist then. So now guards do get paid higher than centers, so, and they are getting closer to offensive tackles as far as the numbers go. So I don't know that would dissuade him if it is the guy. But if it is their, by and far their top guy on their board at that point. But I do think it is a consideration because yes, but are you happy to get 4 years out of him or not? Obviously they've let good players go before. They let Ben Grubbs go, and he was a 4-year deal back then. So it's not unheard of. But I do think, especially now that they're going through with the Linderbaum thing, it probably does give them a little bit of a pause there.
Yeah, obviously Tyler Booker going at 12 really eliminates most of that potential question. He was really long the only one that made sense. A guy like Josh Simmons, even if you play him at guard early on, you probably envision transitioning him out to tackle in the long term. And so that catch-all option and tag designation doesn't really become an issue. The Chargers, a little bit of surprise taking Omarion Hampton. It's become clear to me that something seriously is up with Will Johnson's knee. Something that teams see as a very serious long-term problem with his knee. Which obviously very, very talented player. Very sorry to see that happen to such a talented player. Would be if at this point, if it's bad enough to get past Jim Harbaugh, I feel like it might be bad enough to get and Joe Ortiz. It might be bad enough to get past the Ravens at 27, because that's Ortiz is part of a front office that's been willing to take chance on injured guys multiple times. If they won't do that with a top 10 talent falling this far, it would kind of surprise me if the Ravens did as well. Although who knows? This is also a time where you see how GMs diverge from where they were before, which is something I've been kind of keeping an eye on with Ortiz in LA specifically. 5 picks to go for the Ravens here. And this is, I think, one of the better ways this board could have fallen. Malachi Starks is on the board, as are Donovan Iziraku and Josh Simmons, who are probably the 3 top guys that I would want to be Ravens right now. And we're 3 of the guys who I said could be Ravens in my realistic best case scenario. It still would not shock me, some part of me, if the Ravens took Jihad Campbell, who is just a really exciting young Alabama linebacker. He just turned 21. He might be able to do some stuff on the edge in addition to playing off the ball. I wouldn't be a big fan of using more resources on a linebacker in that case, but it wouldn't be the least Ravensy thing to ever happen. Who are some other names that you guys are interested in with five picks to go?
I can't lie, if Jihad Campbell's still there, I love the tape. The tape is just too fun not to fall in love with the player. The issue is, though, is I am still high on Trenton Simpson. I still think he's got the talent to get to that developmental, or to develop into that linebacker 2 alongside Roquan. But if they're in love with a linebacker, I think there is still some talent. You still got Schlesinger there. You still got Danny Stutzman. You still got, if they like the kid, I think it's Carter from Clemson, you still got some talent at linebacker. But at the same time, if Malachi Starks is there, I love him. But at the same time, I love Xavier Watts. So I think getting Starks is just immediate. Obviously, that takes Watts out of the picture. So if Campbell's there and they can somehow get Watts tomorrow, that'd be awesome. Trading out of 27 right now, I'm okay with it. Trading back and gaining picks for day 2, I'm okay with it right now, seeing the talent that's still on the board.
I think the only player that I wouldn't be okay with trading back from would be Starks, just because I will keep saying it. I think he's a perfect complement to Kyle Hamilton. I think Watts is a good compliment to Kyle Hamilton, and very much in the mold of what the Ravens need. And he's like, him and Andrew Makuba are like kind of the prototype kind of safety that I would like to see the Ravens add. Starks is just, again, I see him as a guy who is similar versatility to Hamilton. It's just that versatility points in a more coverage-oriented direction, which is a really, really good fit with Hamilton, who's just more in that downhill attacking, close to the line of scrimmage role. So I think Starks is the only player here I outright wouldn't pass on for good value. And in a trade back, I think to pass on Simmons or Iziraku, I'd have to get good value in that trade back, obviously. And I would just kind of be surprised if the Ravens phones were the one ringing compared to the Bills. I could see them trading back and taking a linebacker, for example.
Especially, I think the last 2 years they've traded back too. If I'm not,
Yep.
I know obviously last year they did to get Keon Coleman, but if I'm not mistaken, the last 2 years they've traded. No, actually, take that back. They took Kincaid two seasons ago. But yeah, last year they were okay with trading back. I think twice until they took Keon Coleman. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Buffalo be the team that trades out of the late first round.
Yeah, my key worry here, and this is exactly what might be happening. I just saw this reported by Jordan Schultz. I'm gonna lose my mind if this actually happens because I called it. The Eagles are talking with the Packers about moving up to 23, and I think we all know that would be for Malachi Starks, and they do exactly what I was worried about going into this week, that the Ravens would get jumped by Howie Roseman and the Eagles to go get Malachi Starks.
Actually, not yet. Now I'm seeing that the Packers are picking. So, Jordan Schultz, who just 2 minutes ago said they were discussing moving up with the Packers, now says the Packers are picking. So,
and I see it looks like the pick is Matthew Golden, wide receiver, who I do really like out of Texas, and was one of my kind of break glass in case of emergency thoughts for the Ravens. Is if nothing else is there that you really like, I could see him. But even more happy to see Starks. I mean, again, the Eagles are probably potentially going to call the Vikings and the Texans and the Rams, and maybe they'll be able to get their guy. But here's hoping that Starks continues to fall just a little bit more to the Ravens right here. So
also, it looks like the Giants are trying to move back into the first round. So,
and that's long been expected.
Nikhil, I think this is where it's going to come. Where I said Dable wants his quarterback to develop. I think they're jumping into. Now this is where it comes in. Are they one of these teams who are high on Jackson Dart more than a lot of people are, or are they just going to go with the safe pick and grab Shedeur?
Yeah, I mean, I think they want. I think for the Giants, it would be Shedeur they'd come back and get. I don't really see them coming back to get Dart. Milroe feels like too much of a project for the current regime. Shog would be crazy. I've never understood that hype.
That's a nice late day two, like a round 3.
Solid day 2.
In my opinion.
All right, Minnesota here at 24. They could take Starks. I could see them needing a safety. But I also, I don't really know I'm not really sure, but I know what they do here. I think they could use this could be Campbell. They could take an edge. The amount that they love to blitz means having a blitzing linebacker like Campbell is a plus for their team. There aren't really great defensive line talents left here. I think you would have I think you'd have to reach a little bit at this point to take a defensive lineman. So I'm just cleaning up my draft board here. I got to get rid of everyone that's already been drafted.
And the Vikings are looking to trade out.
And if I'm Howie, again, I knew this was going to happen because I just
4 picks.
Yeah.
I think the only way Minnesota would have taken a safety, though, is, they lost signed last year, but, Harrison Smith's on his way out next season, I believe. So that'd be the only way I'd see them taking a safety. But I still think that they got a lot more issues to address. That team is complete offensively, outside of maybe with the question at J.J. McCarthy at quarterback. But there's still more positions to fill other than safety. I still think Harrison Smith could hold it down for another season. He was still pretty solid last year.
Yeah, you said the Vikings only have 4 picks, Brian.
Yeah, that was a reason for wanting to
Yeah,
trade out.
yeah. This feels like the spot for Howie to come up and get Starks and break my heart just a little bit, because I thought a team would take him earlier. I thought a team would look at what all these different safeties have done for their defenses over the last few years in Green Bay and in Detroit, and of course Hamilton and Baltimore, and realize that Starks can bring, Starks brings that skill set. Because even if everyone's not such a world beater like Hamilton, just having the ability to be very good at several things as a safety is, I don't know how it got underrated in the NFL, but it is underrated in the NFL. So
Now, grabbing a guy like Starks, what's your look? Are you hoping to put Ardarius at essentially just nickel, keep him closer to the line, just move Hamilton everywhere and keep Ardarius back like the end or the second half, I should say, of last season?
So I think
I'm just not big on. I mean, I get why you like Starks. I love Starks too, but I'm just not as big on grabbing a safety so early because of the fact that I loved what Darius did towards the end of last season. Once he got that full get out there and ball essentially sort of position, him and Hamilton really started to hold it down. You watched that secondary kind of turn it around towards the second half of the year. So I was just curious what your outlook was if they did grab Starks, because we got Ardarius back as of, what was it, Friday or Thursday of last week?
Yeah, so with Starks, I think it would free up Hamilton to play in the short term this year. He would probably be a third safety. You'd probably have Washington still. I guess you could have Starks start and have Washington be the third safety. It would free up Washington. I think it would just free up a lot of things, but especially you could have Washington and Starks play deeper, have Hamilton play dime with Roquan, have Marlon Humphrey in the slot, Wiggins and Awuzie on the outside. That's what I would do on passing downs, and I think that would be you could still do that on some moderate downs because Starks is such a good run defender. And then the long term, I think he's just a good long term fit with Kyle Hamilton. I don't know how long Washington stays in Baltimore. I mean, he didn't get any interest on the RFA tag, but
Which was interesting to me.
It was surprising to me that draft bias, especially around his size when he's been so injured, is going to stick around in the NFL. So I wasn't surprised at all that he didn't get any interest. But I do think that he could have, if he starts for another full season this year, he could make himself the kind of price point that is, above the value for Ravens, that they just can't afford to keep it in what is ultimately a secondary player. He could be a guy that they get on a value, on like a 3-year value deal. But he's not a guy that I would pay, really starting level safety money for.
Yeah, agreed.
You guys keep on going. I'm going to be right back in just 1 second.
Brian, I got a quick question as far as salary cap. I mean, I'm personally, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of the Andrews trade talk, but what are the possibilities and what is the positive as far as finding a trade partner for Andrews this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, now they paid him the $4 million bonus, so there would have been $11 million. Well, we think it was due unless they quietly decided to just put it off, because sometimes that happens. But assuming they did, because it was due back in March, so the 11 million savings would only now be 7 million based on they've already paid the 4. So, I mean, that's not an insubstantial amount, although at this point they're really probably not going to need it. They are going to need a little more. They're going to need to create a little more cap space at some point, but they have other guys they can restructure. So, I mean, from a cap perspective, it would have made sense trading him back before the beginning of the league year if they were going to go out there and hit the free agent market hard. But clearly that's obviously that's behind them. So if they lose him next offseason as a free agent, they could probably get a 4th round comp pick, but that's not till 2027. So if they get a 4th, so is a 4th worth it this year? If they could get a 4th, and I don't know if they can, but if they get a 4th, is it worth it to save the 7 mil? But they're clearly not as good of a team without Mark Andrews, and I just playoff issues aside, but they're a better team with Andrews. But that's some of those tough decisions you have to make, and the front office has always had to make, when they released I remember when they released Todd Heap, everybody was just stunned, because it did kind of come out of the blue that offseason. So they're not unwilling to make those tough decisions if they feel, and it's better for the future. If they got a 4th round pick this year, that guy's here for 4 years, hopefully. And he's the next Mark Andrews, or he's the next whoever, is a 4th round pick. So, but they don't need the cap space at this point. So it wouldn't be a move to create the cap space because they absolutely need it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So big trade. Well, first the Vikings took Donovan Jackson ahead of Josh Simmons, which, teams are really worried about these medical issues with even Jahad Campbell, Will Johnson, and Josh Simmons. Clearly teams are worried about those medical issues. And the Giants have traded with the Texans. Yes. They are on the clock at 25, and this feels like Shador time. This, to me, Brian, is a case of getting, instead of taking Shador at 3 or trading back in the top 10 to taking Shador, trading up from the 2nd round, still get the 5th round option, but you get him at the 25th pick salary instead of something a lot higher. At quarterback, that feels significant to me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, with the 5th-year option, it's going to be based on playing time and Pro Bowls and things like that. But certainly for the first couple years, and the big signing bonus that you're going to have to throw out, it definitely is a savings there. And if you're not sure about him or you played it the right way, which it certainly seems like they did, to be able to, pass on him in the beginning and then come back and get him later. So it looks like they gave up a 3rd and a 6th to move up. So, it wasn't a huge mortgage or anything like that, for sure.
Yeah, when you think about the history of trading up for a quarterback in a draft or trading up at all, really, it is, typically that 2nd pick is another 1st rounder. And after that, they're, solid day 2 picks. But a 2nd, a 3rd, and a 6th for a late 1st is, I think, really strong value. And I think it's smart for Houston, too, because I think that they were targeting offensive linemen in this draft, and all of the best ones are off the board except for Josh Simmons. And again, I think from an outside perspective, when I do my scouting, I find it very hard to project for current injury and know about current injury woes. Now, I might knock a guy if he has a lot of injuries in college, but Johnson and Simmons and Campbell, who are all dealing with things kind of end of last season to right now, it's really hard for me to say how that's going to affect them. So I kind of focus on the talent I see on the tape. But there's a reason that these guys fall as far. And it's not Shador Sanders, it's Jackson Dart.
Wow.
That is so surprising to me. I think he requires so much scheming. His splits, without play action and on RPOs compared to straight dropbacks are pretty severe. I don't like that. I don't like Dart that much. And then you move all the way up to 25 to get him. When I don't know who, I guess maybe Dart was the guy that they were really worried about.
Wouldn't he have been there at 33?
You would think he would be, and I would understand.
I imagine he's still there at 33. I mean, there's nobody else who needs a quarterback right now. Am I wrong? Is there somebody that I'm missing out after Baltimore as I'm looking on ESPN's ticker? I don't think there's another.
Maybe you could be worried Cleveland was going to go up and get Dart.
Some other team.
Cleveland secretly really liked him, but I personally don't like him enough for that. I guess I don't fault the process. I just disagree with the evaluation.
Although they moved right in front of the Rams, and the Rams could have been a sneaky team, with quarterback getting up there in age. So Stafford, there it is.
The trade makes sense for Houston. It gives them 5 picks now in the top 100. They move back, I think, 9 from where they are now. So they're gaining out of it, especially because, like you were saying, they were looking for O-line help, and right now it'd be a reach to grab one out of the top available at 26 or at 25, in my opinion. They can still grab probably whoever they wanted at. They're picking at 34 now, I believe.
Yeah, 34. And this is a wrinkle I didn't realize until this year, Brian, but when teams tie for the draft order, they go in a certain order for the first round, but that order changes in the second round?
Yes, yeah. So you basically, if it was 3 teams, if you're first in the first round, you would be third in the second round, back to second in the third round, and then back up to first in the fourth. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
so I think it's been a while since we've had 3 teams be in that situation. We may have had 2 in recent years, but I don't think so. I've never noticed it before that. I just never quite caught on to it before that. But now I noticed that this year and thought it was interesting.
Yeah, the Ravens were stuck in one a couple years ago that I think was 4 or 5 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a big swing, and I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And then when I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's why, because all these teams are together.
How
Rams
much
in the clock now? I
how
mean,
much Sanders drop is the baggage with his
so I
spot
think
there?
we've swung all the way to the other end on that in evaluating him, where he was before he was getting extra praise for being a Sanders. I think now he's getting knocked too hard for being a Sanders. I also think he brings some of the NFL ready mental traits that I'm looking for in a quarterback. I know the athleticism and the arm isn't elite, which is why I would want him as a later first rounder, but I still think he's a first rounder because I think that he is ready. We have Atlanta's doing something. They traded up to the Rams pick.
Yeah, it's going to be Starks.
You think that's Starks? They go get another Georgia guy.
They lost Simmons, right? He's a free agent right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they get Starks and who's
jumped right in front of us.
Jesse
Yeah,
Bates.
that's probably going to be Starks here. They already got their edge out of Georgia. Take another Georgia player. This kind of a bummer. It's tough to get this close to the guy that you want because it's also a matter of like, okay, once you get to 26, are you going to trade up with the Rams when all he's got to do is fall one more pick? But I pointed this out as a big risk with the Eagles specifically, but also with the Falcons or another team that risked that. I mean, unless they're looking at unless they really are confident about Campbell or Johnson and their medicals, which I'd be surprised by. They've already got the edge. I don't think they need offensive line help. Maybe a receiver.
Trading up for a guy like Mike Green or anything like that. You don't think they're trying to get that just go grab the quarterback type of pass rusher?
I mean, they already got the edge, right? They already got an edge at 15. And I know Walker is a little bit more of an off-ball edge hybrid, so maybe they look for a more pure edge.
15,
but I think that's me just trying to be optimistic. This just feels like a team trading up for Malachi Starks here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Stings, man.
Really stings. I mean, look, I like Simmons. I like Iziraku a lot. Those are definitely players that I'm like, this is among my best case scenarios for one of these guys to get to the Ravens here. But Starks was like the best case scenario for me.
Wow.
So,
the Falcons came up from 46. They gave up a first round pick next year. A first. So the 40, so they gave one from 46.
It's Shador. No, I'm just kidding.
That would be hilarious.
Please do that. Please, it would be so funny. Please do it.
So that's a guy they have clear conviction on. If you're giving up a first next year, so you're giving up your second and a first this year, plus a late pick.
They gave up, and that's a ton.
Yeah.
Now, do we think obviously Acosta and Harbaugh's press conference last week talking about the red flags? Do we think Mike Green and James Pierce are essentially
they took Pierce?
Just Pierce?
They took James Pierce. Yep.
Oh, guys, I really now I would be all right. So here, all right. So the Ravens here's.
Yes.
So, like I said, after getting an off-ball guy, after getting a hybrid guy in Jalen Walker, Falcons take a pure edge.
Wonder if the Eagles are still out there looking to trade.
Yeah, but I don't think the Ravens would give up Starks today.
Well, that's true.
No,
If,
they better not.
if Starks is their guy.
Are they that high on Starks though?
Yeah,
they would
we could be totally surprised in about 2 minutes.
I'd be open to moving to 32. I mean, depending on what they're giving up, keep a first round pick and gain some more for hopefully tomorrow.
Okay, I mean, this is just how high I'm on Starks, but I wouldn't pass on him here. I wouldn't pass on him. I wouldn't trade up for him, but I certainly wouldn't pass on him here. I just think he's just an overwhelmingly good fit in what they like. I mean, a lot of the buzz, depends how much you believe the buzz, but a lot of the buzz suggests that the Ravens really like Starks. And you know, edge here, tackle here wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world, but I mean,
Corner.
I think Starks is one of the 10 best players in this draft class, or maybe 11 is what I have as like top 10 talents. So we'll see if they do it. It feels like we're all just waiting with
It's a good ass sport for the Ravens, man.
It is. Hey, 3 of my best case scenario guys, Malachi Starks, Iziraku, and Simmons are on the board. I'm not really counting Will Johnson because I didn't consider that scenario, and clearly there's something bigger wrong with his knee.
Yeah.
You know, they're not that far from being in a tough scenario. If, you know, say Starks, Iziraku were gone and they were concerned about Simmons' knee, you know, they could be in a really tough scenario where it's, you know, do you take a best play available linebacker? Nick Scorton's really young. You know, Josh Connerly is, you know, maybe doesn't have the guard experience that you'd want, but could maybe start there next year and take over for Stanley in the future. I don't know, but hopefully none of that is really an issue for the Ravens.
I just had a nasty thought. What if they shock the world and go with Mike Green here? They're not doing it, but what if they did it?
With Mike Green?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that would be a hell of a look after the offseason the Ravens just had.
I was just saying, I don't think
it would be insane.
Anybody with a red flag.
And yeah, I just don't. I would just be surprised by that. I don't know, Brian. You're probably maybe more familiar with this than I am.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I mean, you know, I just they've said what they've said, but they're sitting on their hands with Tucker. You know, I'm just not sure. Now, I don't know the details, and I don't know if anybody knows the full details of the Green situation. Yeah, so maybe there's a little leeway there, but who knows?
You know, two accusations, one in high school, one in college. You know, I think there was rumors that Virginia asked him to sign some no tolerance policy or something when he first got there or something like that. So, yeah. I think I'd be surprised if it was him. I just don't think Burden fits what they value in a receiver.
I don't think they take a receiver with.
How about a corner?
Talent still on the board.
Corner was my like kind of break glass in case of emergency, like a worse board falling. Trey Amos, you know, Maxwell Hairston is, you know, 2025's Nate Wiggins. There are differences in them pretty significantly, right. But their RAS comparison in particular is very similar. So we know that's what the Ravens value in an outside cornerback. Trey Amos to me is also a good counterpart cornerback too. In a way similar to Benjamin Morrison. He has higher upside than Morrison though, but I think he's scheme versatile and can do a lot of different things. And having a guy who's going to hold up in multiple schemes, zone, man, when you have such a talented secondary, that cornerback 2 is going to get targeted a lot. We saw that. We've seen that with Brandon Stevens. And so if I'm the Ravens, you know, I'm thinking that if I'm the Ravens, I'm thinking that a solid CB2, a reliable high floor guy is rather what I would get than really go take a big swing on a Sharon Ravel or a Zaria Thomas or whoever else might have a super high ceiling in this class, but has a much more high variance floor, a lower profile. Ravel or Thomas, specifically. Obviously, Johnson's got the highest ceiling, but the injury thing is so significant. So, the Ravens doing their thing every year with letting talent fall to them. It seems like they are. It seems like they are taking some calls and trying to figure out what they're going to do with this pick. Since they've been on the clock for a little while, with the Falcons trading up in front of them, kind of makes it seem like the Falcons thought that Pierce wouldn't make it past the Ravens.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me. I see the links there. I see the Odafe Owe comp and making him a late first-round pick in a similar vein, a young player. Believing in your edge room and your coaching staff to get the most out of a guy whose character concerns, to me, are more nebulous than they are damning. I think it's more about attitude and want to. And I think one of the things that we forget is that these guys are 21 years old and that 21-year-old guys have a lot of different priorities in their life. And it's okay if a prospect doesn't eat, sleep, and breathe football while he's in college. And as long as you feel confident that you're going to be able to get the most out of him on your team, that takes a good organization, a good culture with the Ravens, which the Ravens typically have, I would say specifically, especially on the defensive side of the ball, good mentors, good coaching. So I could see why they think they get the most out of him, but yeah. So pretty clear that I want Starks here. Everyone else, what would be your preferred pick?
Starks.
Yeah, to me, I'd say Starks or the Boston College edge.
Izaraku, yeah, he's another preferred.
He's
John, got something contrarian for us?
Izaraku, or I'm going to be honest with you, Ha Campbell. I'm sorry. Campbell, I've been a little bit higher. I love Starks, so don't get me. I completely understand why you're so high on him, but I love the
They got him.
On Campbell. They got Starks.
Yeah, they got him.
Nice.
That's really exciting. I can't wait to read that scouting report tonight. Real quick, I do want to address what John was saying. I love Campbell. I love the talent. It's just that if the shoulder is a question mark, that combined with linebacker,
they said he's 100% from the labrum. That's why I was okay with 27.
I've seen a couple different. I've seen some conflicting reports, and so that's a case where I would say if I had the medicals and I knew for sure, I would be okay with it. But since I don't, I'm not. But the Ravens get Malachi Starks. I am ecstatic. This is an A+. This is an A+ pick for me.
They sat there and got it. Yeah.
Yeah, this is an example of the Ravens, and I'm sure they were looking at their predictive boards and trying to figure out if Starks was going to get there based on specifically these trades up from Atlanta, and with the Eagles also trying to trade up as well. But yeah, absolute home run of a pick. Spent, I believe he spent 3 years at Georgia. Started 42 games in his first 3 years at Georgia. He is 21 years old. 6'1", 197. Looking up his RAS here real quick. He's not an elite athlete, 5.29 RAS, and that is on the low. He's essentially an average athlete, the safety position. But I think that he makes up for that with how smooth and controlled he is when moving. I think it's worth noting Hamilton didn't have a great combine either. And for safeties, it's more about how they move than necessarily how fast they move. So that isn't a super, super big concern for me here in terms of landing Starks. Everyone else want to get some more reactions. I know I'm super excited about landing the guy, but I don't want to dominate all the discussion.
Yeah, so
I'm happy with it.
You go, John.
No, go ahead, Jared. You're good.
Oh, all right.
I was just gonna say I'm okay.
Sorry. I must be on delay. You go, John.
Oh, okay. So I'm happy with it. I like Starks. Like I said, Nikki, I liked Starks as a player. I liked him on the tape. Just obviously had Campbell just higher than him. However, I liked Watts as the ball hawk as a safety. So I wish if they were going to go safety, that's where we would have gone, was Starks later on, or not Starks, sorry, Watts later on trading back. But at the end of the day, we got somebody complimentary to Kyle Hamilton to allow him to go back to that Swiss Army knife that he was 2 seasons ago, where we didn't get to see that a lot last year with the struggles in the secondary.
And Jared, we'll swing it over to you now.
Yeah. And that's really why you mentioned that word, John, and that's versatility. That's or like the difference between like Hamilton and Starks, and that's the reason why I love his pick so much. Is that because I was really worried about them loving Nick Imanori, because Imanori to me would just kind of seem like, oh, we have two Kyle Hamiltons and we can kind of move them around. I'm just like, no, like I'd rather have Kyle Hamilton kind of play his role, his thing. Like it's like, remember, Kyle Hamilton had to play free safety because of necessity last year. That wasn't in their plans. So this pick allows them to basically do whatever they want on defense. You can have Rodarius Washington, Starks, Hamilton, and on certain packages. You can have Nate Wiggins. You can have Marlon Humphrey in the slot, and you can flip flop that because Starks is also a really good slot corner. He played a lot of slot corner in the NFL. So Zach Orr can get really creative with this defense and kind of move him around. And some places he's going deep. Some places he's in the slot. He's a very versatile player, and that's one of the reasons why I love this pick.
Yeah, I think again you hit it out of the park with that versatility. It's just such a big plus in a defense that loves to be versatile. Starks, Washington, Hamilton, and Humphrey as a quartet between the two nickel spots and the two safety spots in dime defense, or I guess Hamilton might be more of a dime back in that case, but the same point remains, gives you so many options to work with, combined with Wiggins' ability to just kind of lock down a quadrant of the field. So much to work with there. See that Brandon Porpora is asking on the live stream, how will Starks draft affect the current roster? I think it's, our Darius Washington's probably not super happy because he's probably not a player that's going to get re-signed now. He is going to be competing for his starting job against Malachi Starks. That is a first-round pick against a former undrafted guy who was undersized. Washington is really good and, should still play a primary role in the defense, but Starks is a great safety, and I think it's entirely possible to see them competing for snaps, or just the Ravens end up running a lot of three safety looks. Maybe they push Washington and Hamilton in the nickel a little bit more and move Humphrey outside in some packages. They do have a lot of options, and I remember when they drafted Wiggins last year, what their ultimate plan was during the season wasn't what I was expecting in the offseason. So I do think this kind of means guys like Watts tomorrow are probably not going to Watts, Makuba are probably not under consideration tomorrow. I would still love to double dip at this position because I would love to get another coverage profile safety. I think the Ravens focus too much on guys who can play special teams and run the alley. I would love to get another guy like Malachi Moore. That's a big sleeper of mine, but moves it way down the list of priorities because this is such a good player. Is anyone seeing the Lions pick?
It says the pick is in.
Okay.
Nope.
Can someone let me know when the Lions pick is in? Because I just saw like a tracker, but this seems not real who they're supposedly picking. They're supposedly picking Tyleek Rayner, running back out of Temple. I'm assuming this was a misinput in the tracker that I'm watching, and it's probably Tyleek Williams out of Ohio State, which would make pretty good sense for the Lions here, I think.
Now, Nikhil, you were talking yesterday, or talking momentarily about tomorrow double dipping into safeties. I mean, realistically, is it dumb to take a guy like Watts if he starts sliding? If he gets, I think the team to watch, as far as we were talking about Morrison and Watts earlier, is Cincinnati. I think if either one of them slides past Cincinnati, they're going to fall right to Baltimore. Would it, in your opinion, would it be dumb to grab a guy like Watts, who is your your ball hawk, and then you get a guy like Starks and Hamilton to just you do whatever. I mean, you can just have a field day with those two at safety.
I could see that. I think it would probably be a massacre at defensive line for that to make sense, for there to be virtually no second-round draftable defensive lineman available. You know, if Watts flipped all the way to the third round, who knows? That might be just like a pure best player available that would be hard to ignore. But I would be really surprised if the Ravens prioritized that another safety over defensive line on day 2 at all. I think defensive line immediately becomes their big priority on day 2 now.
Did you guys? Sorry.
Oh no, you're good.
Do you guys follow Charles Robinson, who writes for Yahoo?
Mm-hmm.
He just posted. So I got the NFL Network on. What are you guys watching? That or ESPN?
I'm actually not watching either. I have a draft tracker up that's ahead of the telecast.
So he just posted, and this was about a minute ago. Dude, they just showed the Ravens' entire board on ESPN. What the fuck?
I mean, I think they do that. I think teams know at this point, and I
would hope so, but unless it's something fake. Oh, so somebody said I thought I read Caleb Williams at the top.
Yeah, I think it's last year's draft because I think I think teams know about this at this point. I would
hope so, and the film crew should know too. But you never know. Somebody. Well, that's good.
I think it's like the order. I'm looking at it right now. It's the actual order that players got drafted last year. It looks like so. That's definitely an inside joke between like them and the Chargers or something, because the Chargers did that whole movie character board that they post on Twitter and everyone thought it was their real board. Right. Anyway, the Lions take Tyreek Williams here. Right. He was my favorite potential day 2 edge rusher who I never thought was going to fall all the way to Baltimore. So, well, guys, the Giants already traded up for their quarterback. The Browns are going to have a chance to get Shedeur with pick 1 of day 2. It looks like I do not think anyone else is going to trade up for him, nor any of the next 4 teams going to take a quarterback. It does kind of make you wonder if they could have reunited Hunter and Sanders, and if that was ever a thought in their minds. But I will say how that move would be more exciting because of bringing those two guys together. In terms of actual value, I mean, again, I think taking Hunter at 2 and then taking Shedeur at the first pick of the second round is fine value, and it would be something to get excited about. But I think it would get overblown as, oh my God, they've got this explosive new offense, because Colorado offense still at times really struggled with the 2 of those guys as their focal points. So, I guess let's wrap today up by talking about the remaining players who are on the board that we would like. So the big news, I would say, out of this first round are the injury concerns and the character concerns for Mike Green, dropping him out of the first round. The injury concerns for Simmons, Campbell, and Will Johnson, dropping them close to the bottom of the first round. Although I would think that 31 would be a spot for Simmons to go potentially to the Chiefs. You could see the Bills maybe trying to take a linebacker here. But what are some of the best players that you think fell out of the first round today? Who were some of those guys?
Jaden Higgins, in my opinion.
Jaden Higgins, is that a guy you want to maybe target on day 2 if he falls there?
The thing is, though, is like I love what we got out of Zay and Bateman last year, and I think getting Hopkins upgraded at wide receiver 3. So I don't think wide receiver is as big of a need as some other fans believe. But I mean, Jaden Higgins is that red zone threat that I think would be awesome to grab if, as Brian and I were talking about earlier, if the Ravens ever did decide to trade Andrews this draft weekend, gives you another red zone target. Him and I just don't see the team upgrading secondary back-to-back picks, but Benjamin Morrison, if he falls to our next pick in the second round, would be my 2 guys still available to go grab.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to see them add add multiple defensive backs early on and really gear up their long-term secondary. Commander's still on the clock here. No idea what they would do at this point.
Yeah. I would really like Donovan Izaraku to the Commanders. That would be a really fun pick with Dan Campbell.
Yeah. Josh Connerly Jr. So they they trade for a left tackle, and then they take a tackle who could play guard, but they have guards. Interesting pick. I don't dislike it. I have Connerly graded as a late first rounder. But certainly could have been a target for the Chiefs. The Chiefs obviously, I think, have to be looking O-line here and probably are not very happy with how many offensive linemen have gone here in the 20s. They could roll the dice on Simmons' health, essentially. He could be a great player for them, or the knee issue could hamper him his whole career.
Didn't Brandon Coleman play pretty well for Washington last year?
Yeah, and I think the plan is maybe to switch him to the inside.
Somebody's got to move in, yeah.
Somebody's gonna have to move it. Who's it? I don't know who they have at right tackle right now.
That's Coleman. Well, I mean, it looks. Well, there was Coleman playing left, so I guess they're thinking about him playing right.
So they
got nobody else. That's really all they got. Yeah.
All right, Buffalo on the clock now. This also could be a cornerback maybe for Buffalo. I could see that. I feel like that's they signed. This is another one for you, Brian. I thought it, that 3.2, I think it was base value for Tre'Davious White. That puts him right on the border to the point where it's going to come down to play time. Or it might come down to play time, which means that if you're really galaxy braiding it, you don't want the Bills to take a cornerback here because there's an outside chance the Ravens could get another day 3 pick out of it.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. I mean, I don't think they're signing him to, be a big contributor, if at all. He's just under. I don't know if Nick has posted it on OTC yet, but he actually, it was 3.0, not 3. The one quote had the information at 3 million and said 3.2, so it's even lower as far as the qualifying number or non-qualifying number.
Yeah, so it'll be tight. So day 2, having nabbed a safety. I'm looking at my horizontal big board here. Clearly something we don't know about Simmons, Campbell, and Johnson, injury-wise, whether that's just a concern about Simmons' ability to come back from that patella tendon. Mike Green, the character concerns, I guess, have dropped him off the day 1 board. He's probably not on the Ravens board. In fact, I'm fairly certain that he's not. Day 2, we've talked about cornerbacks. I think there are a number of guys I would love to see available at 59 for the Ravens. I talked about Trey Amos and Maxwell Hairston, and we talked about Benjamin Morrison, Huey. I really agree with that. There are a couple other players I might be willing to take a swing on, but those are the 3 I'd love to see there. There are a ton of defensive tackles I like on day 2, and this would really be where I hope the Ravens go with one of their next 2 picks. I think receiver, edge are also fairly strong, but receiver still isn't quite a priority to me, and I still like some of the day 3 depth, and I'm more willing to wait on that. Any particular names that jump out to you guys as players that you want to add tomorrow?
I mean, a day three guy two day three guys that I really got my eye on. Tate. I mean, if we're gonna address the O line, I should say Tate Ratledge, guard from Georgia, and Chase Lunt, offensive line from UConn. Two very experienced offensive linemen, I should say, who I think could not plug and play guys right away, but I think if we get to the point where Falele is just not a viable option anymore, if Voorhees really takes that step next year, I think you've got a guy in Lunt and Ratledge who could both be plug and plays tomorrow. And I think they have day three value as well. I don't think we have to trade up and reach for a guy like that. And I'm not big on addressing the O line in day two tomorrow. I'd love to go grab a defensive lineman, go grab an edge rusher. If there is a guy like Landon Jackson or somebody still capable of getting to the quarterback high on the board there in round two, but I'd love to get a guy like Ratledge or Lunt in round three tomorrow night.
Jared?
Yeah, I would say corner or defensive tackle would be my hope. It's just a matter of does somebody fall there that we like, but they always round two can always be a little the quirky one for them. So it could be if there is a guy that falls because of injury, maybe they like they did with Ajabo, obviously didn't work out, but maybe they take that opportunity, that chance.
Yeah, I don't love the edge board that's remaining. I think I'd rather wait and see who falls 91 instead of using 59 on one of them, just because I'm not particularly enamored. I think that's assuming Izuraku and Scorton don't fall all the way to 59.
Mhm.
Those guys I would take pretty quickly there. But I think otherwise, I think you could even. I mean, I think Tate Ratledge could start right away at guard. Again, I don't think they're going to take a guard, but I think Tate Ratledge could start right away at guard in the NFL. Chris Paul, Carson Schweisinger, to me, that visit felt like a Ravens airing. That felt like one of them bringing in a guy that they hope sneaks into the back end of the first round before them or something like that. I don't know. I think Demetrius Knight Jr. is someone that that Greg mentioned. Greg DePalma from our lads, when he joined us, he was fantastic. And he mentioned Oladejo as a potential guy for the Ravens to take on later on day two, as well as Demetrius Knight Jr. So that Demetrius Knight Jr. could be like a best pick available late on day three as well. But all right, fellas. Well, I've had a fantastic time doing this live draft with you, but we have reached over 3 hours of live streaming. So I'm a little worn out. Anything else anyone wants to cover specifically tonight about Malachi Starks, about what you want out of this draft the next 2 days, about the Ravens in general?
Yeah, it's in terms of just like the NFL draft in general, it's just the fact that like how far do Shedeur and potentially Mike Green fall, as we do have a trade up from the Eagles, so this might be the Mike Green spot. They've done this before with a guy like a Jalen Carter.
No, Green is off their board, or Roseman's publicly a hypocrite. Roseman said, I believe it was at the combine or something, he was pretty adamant about not taking players that have a history of violence against women, specifically naming that. He didn't talk about all character concerns or all legal issues. He named that. I think it would be tough to do this. They just jumped the Chiefs, right? They only jumped the Chiefs here too, which is a little weird. I guess maybe they were
offensive line.
Yeah, the Bills go with Hairston, who, like I said, has somewhat of a similar profile to Nate Wiggins. Tough player. Not super surprised by that for them. Bills stay at corner.
No, but the Chiefs traded with each other, so they're not jumping.
The Chiefs and the Eagles swapped, and it was probably like a day 3 pick swap, and the Chiefs were like, yeah, whatever, because I don't know. It would be funny if the Eagles somehow sniped who the Chiefs wanted here, but I don't know if KC would let that happen. All right, let's look at the consensus board to see who Howie Roseman takes here. I think with 2 picks left, we might as well hang on to the last 2 picks, and then we can all sign off. If anyone does have to get going sooner, of course, feel free. This could be Mike Green. I would just be surprised given what they've said. It could be Izuraku, who doesn't have injury concerns and feels like he is the best healthy player available right now. I don't know. We'll take BP. I'm going to say it's Izuraku.
Could they be looking corner with Slay leaving?
They could be looking corner, maybe like a Trey Amos. And that would give them another versatile guy. And they have Mitchell on the outside. Amos and DeJean are a little bit more versatile. They re-signed Bond, so I don't see this being Campbell. It's not Green. Johnson has the injury. Johnson and Simmons' injury concerns got to be significant for them to even get this far. I think it's going to be Izuraku, because I think they're going to try and move on from what's his name, their other edge rusher, Bryce Huff. After this year, after that disaster of a contract, it's really slow. I mean, he could bounce back this year, but I think if not, they want to prepare for the eventuality that he's not what they thought. Very curious to see what this is.
Would they need Campbell?
They took Jihad Campbell. I was a little surprised. They just paid.
No, I just said would they take? Oh, they did take.
They did.
Okay.
So you're right.
Well, they've had luck on guys falling. That's for sure.
They have, and I think Campbell is one of those players that falls. But my question is, did he fall because he's a linebacker, or did he fall because of some of the injury concerns? John, I know you mentioned that like the labor room checked out, but I have read a lot of conflicting reports, and so teams might have differing opinions ultimately on the health there. So Chiefs at 32.
I just think at 31, though, the rich get richer there.
Yep.
31's a great value to grab Campbell, in my opinion. Even if the labor needs a little bit of time, I think that's not an injury that's going to prevent him from being as electric as he was this season in Alabama.
Yeah, should pick Josh Simmons for the Chiefs here. What they will pick, I really don't know. I think they could go offensive line here, but to me, Simmons is the only guy that's worth a pick now. The offensive line, they've massacred the offensive line board in the first 30 picks. So many guys off the board. You could reach for a Ratledge, but like there aren't even tackles I would really think about for a little while. Maybe Ariante Ursary if they really like. I really like him, but you've got to think maybe they think they can do okay with Mike Green. Or they're okay with Simmons' knee.
I wonder who the Eagles were worried about trading up to want to jump just that one spot.
Yeah, I don't know unless they were maybe really worried about the Chiefs also going best pick available. I forget if the Chiefs re-signed Bolton or did they let him walk? I think they let him walk, right? I'm not sure now.
Yeah.
But that could have been a
I
thought.
think they re-signed him.
Did they re-sign him?
I don't remember him going anywhere else. I don't remember because it would have been a big deal.
They did re-sign him. And they have Tranquil and Chanel coming back from last year. So I guess linebacker would be a surprise there. I guess with Simmons' knee checks out, this would be a good spot for him. If they're okay with the Mike Green character stuff, he's probably the best player available here. Maybe they go with Izuraku on the edge, but
I'd be shocked to see Kansas City not go offensive line after everything they lost this offseason.
I just don't know who's the first round offensive lineman here if Simmons' knee is not as good as reports indicated.
We've seen
Or
them
three,
reach
maybe?
though. Who they take? Who was the guy they took last year from BYU? Who just never? He
Oh,
just didn't
Kingsley
pan out.
Suamataia.
Yeah, did
Mhm.
not
Yeah, I
pan
mean, I thought that was. I mean, it was fine value in the second round. I felt like that wasn't a crazy reach. Maybe a little bit of a reach, but I don't know who would. I mean, I think Ariante Ersary would be the next best tackle in this case, and I wouldn't hate. I'm really high on him, so I wouldn't hate that for the Chiefs. So still waiting. Still waiting on the Chiefs pick here. We've talked about defensive line, corner being the priorities tomorrow. Just happy the Ravens got my guy. I think this is twice in 3 years that I've been on their first round pick for a while. I was on Flowers for a while. I was surprised by Wiggins because of how light he was and how much they tended to prefer bigger physical corners, not just lengthwise, but mass and strength. But they really believed in his ability to develop, and he showed that last year. Trying to think in the previous first rounds. 22 was Hamilton, who I just didn't think would fall to them. Loved him, but didn't think would fall to them. 21, I really wanted Bateman, and they landed him. So a pretty decent record with these late first round picks, getting the guy I want. It's always a little rewarding when the team thinks at least a little bit similarly to you. But the Chiefs are taking their sweet time. Maybe they're hoping someone's going to come up and get Shador here and get that fifth-year option. Maybe the Browns want to scoot up one pick and get that fifth-year option with Shador. One of the more interesting falls out of the first round for him over this arc over the last 2 years since moving to Colorado and really jump-starting his prospect process at Colorado, playing in the Big 12, I believe, this year now. So really surprised to see him fall out of the first round.
Yeah.
I did think that some team was going to at least come up to get him. It still could happen here with a Chiefs trade, but it doesn't seem like that is that any team is looking to come up. It was dark.
I think the completion percentage alone is shocking that no team just gave a shot. I mean, he's 71.8% completion percentage last year alone, or I think it's over his last 2 years in the Big 12. I mean, that's the Big 12 has the bad rep for not having the greatest of defenses, but he went from Jackson State to a Power 5 school and showed that he can still win. And I think just the Jackson Dart going ahead of him, I think shocks me the most. I think that's why I'm most baffled about the fact that he's still here as Kansas City sitting at 32.
Yep, Kansas City's still on the clock. As soon as we announce their pick, we're going to go ahead and sign off because I know it's getting late and it's technically a work night. Like I said, if any of you guys need to get going now, by all means, I'm sure this pick won't matter too much for the Ravens, although they might have to play. It is a Chief, and we're quite familiar with them.
You want to know something interesting though? Do you know that apparently Howie loved Campbell so much he was willing to trade up to 23 to get him with the Chargers?
Say one more time.
Sorry, was I cutting out?
You said Howie Roseman loved Campbell so much that's who he's trying to get earlier.
Yeah, he was trying to trade up to the Chargers at 23 to get him.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a situation where I'm like, you have to be patient. Don't get too overzealous because I think once a guy starts falling, you can kind of predict that he's going to fall for a little while longer. Any updates on the pick is in for KC here, so they're just taking their sweet time with the last pick of the draft of the first round, I should say. Seeing a lot of really positive grades coming in for Malachi Starks for the Ravens. I'm not at all surprised by that. He was, when a team is so frequently mocked to take a specific player before the draft, and he seems to be such an obvious fit, it makes it very easy to grade that and say, yes, this is a great idea, and everybody loves it. I think when I'm watching Stark's film, I'm gonna watch with a really critical eye because of how big a fan I am of his. Knowing that I need to, find some weaknesses and really look for them and try and provide a balanced view of the prospect and not just, a guy I love. Before the draft, I'm banging the drum and I love him and that's all I want. But now that he's on the team, it's time to really, really drill into exactly what player you're getting and exactly what role he's going to play in this defense. And the Chiefs continuing to take their sweet, sweet time.
Definitely easy to respect that. I mean, I was the same way with Lamar. I was big on him coming out of the draft, and obviously I'm one of his biggest fans, but I will say right now I'm also one of his biggest critics. I mean, you can't love a guy and then not criticize some things that are bad in his game, which is nice to respect out of you with Malachi Starks.
Yep. And the Chiefs do the right thing and go with Joshua Simmons. They get the guy they need at the offensive line. It's a big question for if he's going to be able to contribute for them right away, but I do really like that value for them with the 32nd overall pick. John, Jared, Brian, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Special thank you to Greg from Our Lads. We really enjoyed having you and all of the insight that you provided. So big shout out to Greg DePalma. And thank you to everyone who tuned in throughout this evening. I know we set this up a little bit late, but we're glad those of you that joined us. It will remain on YouTube for you to see the rest of our reactions. I'm definitely going to go clip my reactions to drafting Malachi Starks. He is a Raven. The draft for first round is over at 11:42 p.m., which is a little bit earlier, I think, than some past years. So good job, NFL. Thanks for the extra sleep. And everyone have a good night.
You too. Thanks for having me on.